So once I'd done my research into what peer tutoring was all about and the way it had been done before in other places, I then realised, or it was quite apparent that I was going to need to do some training of the students, because I can't really expect the students, neither the peer tutors nor the tutees, to be able to get the most out of the sessions without some prior experience, some training, some understanding of why they were doing what they're doing and how to do what they're going to do to the best of their ability. So the first two sessions were purely about what is peer tutoring, why are we doing it, what happens in a certain scenario if our tutee is not responding well to the things that we're trying to show them. What happens if our tutor is getting annoyed with us because we're not understanding it as quickly as he or she wants us to? What happens if, there were a variety of scenarios that we role-played and that we went through, and at the end of that they sort of graduated from that training course with a certificate to say that they had been peer tutor trained. And that was for all of them. That was for they all got the same training, whether they were going to be a peer tutor or a peer tutee. And that's because I want them to feel valued in whichever role they're learning in that day.
Or a reflex angle, just so it can help you to check your work. You got 32. Obviously, this is much bigger than 32. I mean, it's obviously an obtuse angle, so it's going to be more than 90. So then, what you should do is work out these two added together, then take the answer that you get from these two added together from 180 to work out all the angles in a triangle. Then, because all angles on a straight line add up to 180, the answer here would be 32. So 32 taken away from 180 is 148, so that should be your answer. Then you got this one correct, and you got this one correct.
The peer tutoring bit then begins, say about 10 minutes into the lesson, once I've had the chance to set up what, in the students' minds, what it is we're doing that day, why it's important, how that feeds into what we've just been learning and what we're going to be learning, real-world examples, that kind of thing. So then we transition into the seating arrangement so that I've got the right tutors working with the right tutees, and I've had to spend a lot of time thinking about where those partnerships would result in optimal learning. So thinking about each individual's character, each individual's strength and areas for development, and then trying to pair them up so that they work best. The session then will start with a lesson plan for the tutor and a work pack for the tutee. And at the beginning of each of their sessions, they're invited, so they should say hello to each other, greet each other, say that they're looking forward to working with each other, and then the tutor will explain what it is they're going to be covering in that session. Then the tutee begins their work pack, and the first thing on the work pack is a pre-tutoring quiz. And then they've got the same kind of quiz at the end of the tutoring session so that we can compare the raw score before the tutoring started and the raw score afterwards, and hopefully we see some upwards improvement. As the session progresses after the pre-tutoring session, there's usually, before moving on with the pack, there's usually some kind of game or activity between them. So a game of ping pong where the tutor gives them a number and the tutee needs to multiply it by 10, or they need to subtract it from 180, or they need to divide it by the same number, or so a game of ping pong, or something with the flashcards, or a game of Simon Says, but something just between them that gets them talking, gets them kind of excited and playing something together. Then on the lesson plan, the tutor will be guided into what they need to show the tutee. And after they've done some demonstrating on a spare piece of paper, the tutee is then asked to do a particular activity. While the tutee is doing that activity, the tutor reads ahead in the lesson plan and or supports the tutee in doing the activity they're doing. Once they've completed the activity, the tutor will mark it and order sort of go through the answers with them, and then they'll move on to the next part. And there's usually 4 to 5 activities, and they vary in length and content, and then it finishes with a post-tutoring quiz. And finally, the third role that we've got in the class is a supervisor, a peer supervisor, and he is a sort of, or he or she is an extra pair of eyes, is an extra pair of hands, and they go around. They've got a couple of roles. One is that they are sort of a resource manager, so they'll help to hand things out. The second role that they've got is to monitor what's going on, as in to check on the pre and the post tutoring scores, to check that the tutors are meeting expectations, and to check that the tutees are meeting expectations. And we set out those expectations very clearly as part of the training and at the beginning of each session, so that we know what we're all trying to achieve. Okay, Hussein, tell us what you found. Tracking Hussein.
The review on Marcel, they were still friendly and happy, and when Marcel didn't understand the question, he explained it good. And
explained it well.
Well, and she always, yeah, and he gave her harder questions sometimes. And
why did you give her harder questions?
Because she found it sometimes too easy.
Oh, well done, good. So stretching your tutor, excellent.
And for a pre-learning quiz, she got 4 out of 6. For the post, she got 7 out of 7.
Well done. Let's give Marcel and Ravi 2 claps. 1, 2, 3. What have you learned so far from your peer tutor? Your tutee, what have you learned so far? Farhad, tracking Farhad.
When the shape has a right angle, and it doesn't say 90, so you have to add it up as well.
So even though it might not say 90 degrees, but it's quite clearly indicated with a little half square, then you still need to include it in the calculations. Good. Something else, Hajar, tracking Hajar.
But what Cheryl found tricky was actually minusing it, so I taught her the borrowing method and then she just aced it.
Okay, so what Sakib's doing very well there is working out his tutee's strengths and her understanding and the areas that she needs to work on. And he's been targeting those. So how do you feel about what Sakib's been helping with?
Good.
Good in what way?
Way that we can take away, you can borrow from there to talk about this again.
You feel more confident with it? Okay, I'm going to come and check Sakib's tutor in a minute and see. So I've learned a lot of things about peer tutoring along the way, and it didn't start off where, in terms of where I've got to now. It wasn't the same when I first started. One of the things that I realised early on was that I needed a peer supervisor, that I was trying to manage resources, support the peer tutor pairings, extend the peer tutor in terms of their questioning of the tutee, support the tutor when they weren't comfortable entirely with the content, and trying to do all of that and trying to manage lots of different things. As well as trying to hold the tutor groups to account. So the supervisor helps me to do that, and they can act as an extra teacher as well, as a sort of head teacher, and they can go in and they can help the tutor and the tutee as well. So that was one extra thing that I added. Then once I got the supervisor in place, the next thing that it took me a couple of sessions to realise was that the tutor needed a framework, the supervisor needed a framework to work from, that they needed a set of criteria, of things that they were looking for from the tutor and the tutee. And so I've created a sort of a marking matrix, and as they float round from group to group, they're kind of checking that the tutor pairings are working well, that they seem comfortable, that the tutor is extending where there's an opportunity to extend, that they're explaining where there's an opportunity to explain, that the tutee is calm, that the tutee is trying hard, that they're focused, etc. So I created that matrix. The next thing I learned was that there should be a pre and a post tutoring quiz. So I didn't start off with that, but the pre and the post tutoring quiz were designed to build in accountability and to show clear progress from beginning to end. Then I realised that having put in the pre and the post tutoring quiz, I needed a space for the tutor to record that on their lesson plan, so that I could take back the lesson plans, or at least something where I had a before and an after score. And by putting that on the sheet, it then kind of made the tutor feel just a little bit more accountable, knowing that the scores were going to be collected in and that I would be finding out the progress that had been made. I've developed another number of little things in the content of the session, such as, you know, the kind of the meet and greet at the beginning, the explaining of the lesson objective between the pairings, also adding in there just a breakdown of the headings, adding in more examples of my own to support the tutor who's trying to think quickly on their feet.